In 1991, the World Health Organization classified coffee as a possible carcinogen, a Group 2B potential cause of cancer.
Coffee drinkers around the world panicked.
Headlines screamed about their morning ritual causing cancer. 25 years later, in 2016, the WHO reversed that classification entirely and acknowledged that coffee may actually reduce certain cancer risks.
If that reversal doesn't make you want to understand the evidence yourself, nothing will.
Here's the problem with interpreting coffee health research: early studies were observational, they found correlations, not causes. An early study found that heavy coffee drinkers had higher rates of lung cancer.
Alarming headline.
But heavy coffee drinkers in the 1970s and 80s were also, in large proportions, heavy smokers.
When researchers controlled for smoking, the coffee cancer link vanished completely. The coffee wasn't causing cancer. The cigarettes were. Coffee was just associated with cigarettes. Modern coffee health research is dramatically more rigorous.
Large prospective cohort studies, following hundreds of thousands of people over decades, with careful statistical control for confounding variables, have produced a remarkably consistent picture. The 2017 BMJ review that comprehensively analyzed over 200 meta-analyses of coffee studies reached a conclusion that surprised even the researchers. Coffee was associated with net health benefits at moderate consumption levels for most health outcomes studied.
Parkinson's disease is where the coffee health connection is strongest and most consistent.
Multiple large studies spanning different countries, different populations, and different methodologies have found that regular coffee consumption, 3 to 4 cups per day, is associated with a 25 to 30% reduced risk of Parkinson's disease. The mechanism appears to involve adenosine A2A receptors in the basal ganglia, which regulate dopamine pathways, the system Parkinson's attacks. Caffeine appears neuroprotective in exactly the right place.
Type 2 diabetes is perhaps the most striking finding in all of coffee health research.
A 2014 Harvard study following over 100,000 people for 20 years found that people who increased their coffee consumption by more than 1 cup per day over a 4-year period reduced their type 2 diabetes risk by 11%.
Decrease coffee consumption by more than 1 cup? Diabetes risk increased by 17%.
The dose-response relationship is so clean and consistent across studies that it's hard to attribute to chance.
The diabetes benefit appears to come from compounds other than caffeine. Decaffeinated coffee shows similar diabetes protection, pointing to chlorogenic acids and other polyphenol rather than caffeine as the active ingredient.
These compounds appear to improve insulin sensitivity and regulate glucose metabolism.
This is good news for decaf drinkers and for the idea that coffee's health benefits extend beyond its stimulant effect. Liver health is another area of strong, consistent evidence.
A large meta-analysis found that drinking 2 cups of coffee per day was associated with a 43% reduction in liver cirrhosis risk. Coffee consumption is also associated with reduced risk of hepatocellular carcinoma, the most common form of liver cancer, with each cup per day associated with approximately 15% risk reduction. The liver seems to genuinely benefit from coffee compounds in ways researchers don't yet fully understand. The cancer picture is complex but generally more positive than early research suggested. The 2016 WHO reclassification was based on evidence that coffee consumption was associated with reduced risk of oral, pharyngeal, colorectal, endometrial, and liver cancers. The one concerning exception, very hot beverages above 65 degrees Celsius, are classified as probable carcinogens because temperature, not coffee itself, increases esophageal cancer risk.
The recommendation: let your coffee cool slightly before drinking.
Cardiovascular effects of coffee are nuanced and dose-dependent. Moderate consumption, 3 to 5 cups per day, is associated with neutral or slightly beneficial cardiovascular outcomes in most studies. Higher consumption, above 6 cups daily, is associated with modestly increased cardiovascular risk in some populations, particularly those with genetic variants affecting caffeine metabolism. The cardiovascular story is moderate is fine, excess may not be. Blood pressure is where coffee's cardiovascular effects are most acute and most misunderstood. Caffeine causes a transient blood pressure increase, typically 3 to 7 millimeters of mercury, lasting about 3 to 4 hours. In people who drink coffee regularly, this effect is blunted by tolerance within days to weeks.
Epidemiological studies find no long-term association between regular coffee consumption and hypertension in most populations. The acute spike is real. The chronic effect in tolerant drinkers is minimal. Mental health is one of coffee's most complex interaction areas.
Moderate coffee consumption is associated with reduced risk of depression. A 2011 Harvard study found women who drank 4 or more cups daily had a 20% lower depression risk than those who drank 1 cup or less.
The mechanism may involve caffeine's dopaminergic effects and its role in energy and motivation regulation. However, high doses of caffeine can worsen anxiety disorders, suggesting a nonlinear relationship with mental health. Cognitive function and dementia prevention is an active research area with promising but not definitive results.
Several large studies have found associations between coffee consumption and reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease and all-cause dementia. The CADE study, following Finnish people for 21 years, found that those who drank 3 to 5 cups daily in midlife had a 65% decreased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's compared to non-drinkers.
The finding is intriguing, but correlation doesn't establish mechanism.
Bone health has historically been cited as a coffee negative. Caffeine slightly inhibits calcium absorption. Large-scale studies have found that very high caffeine consumption combined with low dairy intake may modestly decrease bone density.
But at normal consumption levels, the effect is essentially neutralized by any calcium intake.
Drinking 1 glass of milk per day completely offsets the calcium absorption effect of normal coffee consumption. The bone concern is real but easily managed.
Fertility and reproductive health is another area where coffee research has produced legitimate concerns alongside overblown headlines.
Evidence suggests that very high caffeine consumption, above 600 milligrams daily, may be associated with increased miscarriage risk.
At 200 milligrams or below, the level in roughly 2 standard cups, there is no consistent evidence of adverse reproductive effects.
The recommendation of limiting caffeine during pregnancy to 200 milligrams per day is conservative but evidence-based.
Athletic performance benefits are well established. Caffeine is one of the most studied ergogenic aids in sports science. It reliably improves endurance performance, reduces perceived exertion, improves reaction time, and enhances muscular strength.
These effects are so consistent and significant that the World Anti-Doping Agency monitored caffeine as a potential banned substance in elite sport until 2004. It was removed from the ban list partly because of how widely consumed it is and how difficult it would be to prohibit.
Mortality, the big one, has been studied extensively.
A 2012 New England Journal of Medicine study of over 400,000 Americans found that coffee consumption was inversely associated with total mortality. People who drank coffee had lower death rates than non-drinkers. The sweet spot appeared to be 4 to 5 cups daily for both men and women, with risk reductions of 12 to 16% for mortality from all causes.
The relationship held for decaf, again suggesting non-caffeine compounds are doing significant work. Gut microbiome effects are an emerging area.
A 2021 study in Nature Reviews Gastroenterology found that regular coffee consumption changes the composition and diversity of gut bacteria.
Coffee polyphenol, which are largely unabsorbed in the small intestine, become available to gut bacteria in the large intestine.
These bacteria metabolize the polyphenol into other bioactive compounds. The microbiome picture is still being mapped, but the effects appear largely beneficial. Brewing method affects the health profile of your coffee significantly. Paper-filtered coffee removes most of the diterpenes, cafestol and coeal, associated with LDL cholesterol elevation.
Unfiltered methods like French press, Turkish coffee, and espresso retain these compounds.
The 2020 European Journal of Preventive Cardiology study found that filtered coffee drinkers had significantly lower all-cause mortality rates than unfiltered coffee drinkers. How you brew matters for health, not just flavor. The honest summary: for most healthy adults, drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day is associated with multiple measurable health benefits and negligible risks. The benefits appear across Parkinson's, type 2 diabetes, liver disease, several cancers, cognitive function, athletic performance, and all-cause mortality. The risks: elevated acute blood pressure, anxiety in high doses, sleep disruption if consumed late, are real but manageable with sensible consumption habits. What coffee is not: a medicine, a cure, or a substitute for sleep, exercise, and diet quality. The associations found in population studies don't mean coffee caused the benefits, they mean coffee is correlated with lower disease risk in populations that drink moderate amounts. The compounds responsible are increasingly well understood, but coffee is healthy is a significantly different claim from drinking coffee will make you healthy. The 1991 classification of coffee as a possible carcinogen was based on inadequate evidence and confused association with causation. The 2016 reversal was based on much better data, more rigorous methodology, and a willingness to follow evidence rather than early assumptions. Coffee's health story is, on balance, a genuinely good one, which is remarkable for a substance that 1 billion people use daily primarily for its psychoactive properties. So drink your coffee without guilt, within reason. Enjoy it slowly, savor it for what it is, and recognize that you are, probably, doing something mildly beneficial for your body at the same time. The caveat, probably beneficial, applies to the coffee, not the 600-calorie caramel frappuccino that shares its name.